So with this, hello everyone. My name is Stefan Reuter. Welcome to the session. And I would like to give the floor to Pedro Crema, Regional Director of Borda Las Americas, to address the welcome note. Please, Pedro.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Stefan. Good morning, dear colleagues, dear participants, dear friends. This morning, Pedro Crema addresses you. I'm Regional Director for Latin America and the Caribbean of Borda, Bremen Overseas Research and Development Association. We are an association dedicated to promote sustainable water and sanitation solutions. We are a mainly technical association, and as such, we could say that we are aware of the need to visualize wastewater treatment under new maxims, or let's say under new planning guiding layers. If we look at the beginning and probably until recently, for the planning of wastewater management system, the guiding layer was human hygiene, focusing on the control of harmful effects on human health. Nowadays, we could say the guiding layer of planning is more and more the protection of water, groundwater, surface water, etc. And shortly, we say to this guiding layer, it will be necessary to add the conservation, reuse of nutrients, energy use, and the elimination of greenhouse gases linked to wastewater and its treatment. So on the other hand, we know that geographic and climatological conditions have a relevant influence on the design of wastewater treatment solutions, on the applicability of processes, technologies, and on the risk assessment related to the proposed solutions. With this in mind, and also knowing that the ecosystem of the Caribbean countries are especially fragile, we have teamed up with the GIZ, the German Agency for International Cooperation, with the idea of preparing a compendium of sanitation systems and technologies contextualized for the Caribbean. So it gives me a great pleasure to welcome you to this kickoff workshop, whose purpose is to involve in the most effective and most efficient way the regional Caribbean experts in the confirmation of this compendium, that is, to involve you. For this reason, I'm highly appreciating the interest shown by all of you by participating in this workshop. And I hope that in the course of the next 90 minutes, we can accurately capture this interest and your desire to contribute to this fantastic opportunity we have to create a practical document to decision makers and designers of sanitation systems in the Caribbean. So I would like to close thanking especially the GIZ. Mr. Tizian Küppel from GIZ accompanies us. We just listened to him for the trust and support they have provided us. And I also, of course, take the opportunity to thank Agua Tuya de Bolivia, an organization dedicated to water and basic sanitation. The Sustainable Sanitation Alliance from Latin America, Susana Latin America, AIRVAC, the Swiss Federal Institute of Aquatic Science and Technologies, and Aqua and Waste International, German consultant. All of them I thank for opening their networks in order to allow us to reach out to all of you and support the project with their respective expertise. So without further ado, I wish you all a fruitful workshop and give the floor to my colleague Selene Tripp from Borda, Mexico, to tell us who we are gathered in this enormous virtual conference room. Please go ahead, Selene.
Thank you very much, Pedro. I will share my screen. Please let me know whenever you can see it. Okay, so we would like to give a couple of minutes just to give an overview of how many people we reach and where they are from. I would like to thank and address to all the organizations and the people that help us spread the invitation to this workshop. And for you also, the people attending, if you share the invitation with your teams or with your networks, thank you again. With the different invitations that were shared by GIZ, Crew Plus Academy team, Borda also, Susana Latinoamérica, etc. We reach up to 50 people interested in this project, in the development of this compendium. And we reach a lot of people from from the different countries of the Caribbean. As you can see, we had 9 registrations for this workshop from people from Trinidad and Tobago, some people from Mexico, some people from Jamaica, but also a lot of 1, 2, 3, 4 people interested from different countries and even from some other region, the European region. So this gives us a sight of how many people is interested in these kinds of projects, how many people feel the need of developing this kind of focused literature for a regional context. So we can have an overview of how we can reach all these people too. And we also got people from very different sectors. We have some people from NGO. We also have some important numbers of people from government authorities at the national level, also at the local and at the regional level. And most of the people interested and registered to this workshop were from utilities, also a few consultants and also people from the academia. So this is how we can also have a look on how people from different sectors are also interested in this project and to contribute. And for us, it's very important to have also these contributions and collaborations with people from different sectors because they also have different views of the situation. So thank you very much and welcome all.
Thank you very much, Selene. And with this, I will take over. Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome from my side. My name is Stefan Reuter, and I work for the German consultant company Aqua and Waste International. And I'm very pleased to be with you during this kickoff workshop. It's regarding the Compendium of Sanitation Systems and Technologies. And to get us going, I would like to start with a little poll. And as a side note, before we start with this poll, please, my co-hosts from Borda, if there's anybody trying to get into the room, assist me in letting them in. And for all of you, we are recording this session so that those who can't make it for today can be part of this kickoff at a later stage at their convenience. And with this, I would like to launch a poll. I hope you can see it on your screen. I would like to know whether you know about the Compendium of Sanitation Systems and Technologies, specifically the one from Airwax Sandec. So if it's new to you, please check box number 1. If you have seen it but not really worked with it, please check box number 2. And if you already worked with it, please check box number 3. While you are busy filling it out, just the feedback from the other meeting, we had the kickoff workshop in Spanish with about 35 participants. We had about 230 enrolled, so the request from Spanish-speaking countries is quite high. And about 50% of the participants have never heard about the compendium. And about 30% said, yes, I saw it, but did not work with it. and 20% said and replied, yes, I did work with it already. And with this, let me end the poll in this group. I hope I can share the results with all of you. We had 7 persons managed to participate. Thank you very much. So about 60% almost, for them it's new. About 40% saw it, but really active working with that has not yet taken place. So it's a good opportunity to introduce that one with all of you. So with this, I would like to start my presentation, and please tell me if you can see the presentation in a moment. All right. So introducing the project. Next slide, please. I introduced myself already. We will quickly address, as we mentioned in our agenda, why a compendium, what is the compendium, when will it be done, by whom, and how you are able to contribute. And that's the aim of our discussion today. The compendium has been around for some time, and it has been a big help to overcome the need of shared understanding of sanitation service chain. It is really essential to share and use the same terminology when we approach solutions for wastewater treatment. It will enable not only the decision-making community, but also the users, utilities, administrators, lawmakers, to develop better and faster decision-making on appropriate sanitation solutions, wastewater treatment solutions, doing the right technology choices, contextualized to their specific built and natural environment. Next, please. So on the right side, you can see the Compendium of Sanitation Systems and Technology as it was developed by ERWAG SANDEC and the International Water Association, supported by the Sustainable Sanitation Alliance, Susanna. And that will be my point of reference when we talk about the compendium. It is widely used and applied. It is structuring and putting in order to try and tested technologies. And it is available in about 8 languages today, both as a PDF document and also as e-compendiums on the SSWM Info website. So it provides systems and technologies covering the entire sanitation chain, from user interface to safe disposal and reuse. And what that means, let me walk you through it a little bit. Next slide, please. All right, so this one was the website of ERWAG SANDEC, and they are part of our team. They are supporting this project. Next slide, please. Yeah, that's the online compendium, and it is also available already in Spanish. Next slide, please. In the compendium, the structure is following both a color code, each with selected sanitation technologies. You can see number 1 is the user interface in red, the collection and storage step. Number 2, the conveyance, the treatment and the use of disposal. Those are elements which also have been utilized by the webinar presented by Gustavo Heredia and the previous block of webinars and trainings. If you have been able to follow them, you'll recall them. Next, please. So let's look at them, at these 5 steps. The user interface will contain just a number of different user interfaces where we could also call them toilets, where the products of urine, feces enter into our system. And there are many of varieties. The next one is then the step of collection, storage, and treatment close to the household. systems like septic tank, very well known and accepted in the region, but there are other alternatives to that, depending on the kind of user interface or toilet you have been using. Next one. Then comes the step of conveyance. Could be done through pipes. It could be done through wheels, like emptying a septic tank and delivering the sludge on a vacuum truck to the next step. And the next slide, please. Yeah, to the treatment. We have centralized treatment, more decentralized treatment. We have a variety of treatment solutions, and that's actually what we would like to examine. Next step, please. At the end, either the treated water is what we call disposed of, or it is used for beneficial use downstream. And actually, I think this is what we were discussing. And if I was listening to Gustavo, he at several points was introducing the concept of planning your wastewater treatment system from the end, meaning from the point of use after the last treatment step. Next slide, please. So the compendium, as it is structured in the original document, has two parts. Part number one, a number of sanitation system templates, and part two, a number of technology information sheets for each of the technologies which we just have been looking at during the functional systems. There are 54 treatment technologies structured in a number of system templates. Next one, please. Yes, thank you. So let's look at those sanitation system templates and just start with one example of them, which is a black water treatment system with infiltration afterwards. Next slide. So what you can see here now is a template, a system number 6 in this case, black water treatment with system infiltration. And what you notice is that we can recognize our functional groups I have just been mentioning before, and the different products which either in the beginning go in to my functional group, the user interface, and then after each treatment step, after each functional group, new products will come out until at the end we do have products which we then understand, aha, this is what I'm getting out and this is what I can consider for reuse. Or if I combine a certain technology to take care of the products which are part of the previous treatment step, this is how I can combine my sanitation system. So we are seeing this as one system template, system number 6. Next, click please. So in part 2, the technology information sheets will then give further information about the pros and cons of my technology, which I have been choosing. Please click. Yes, so all of them have a technology code. Next. All of them have a technology label. Next. And they do have a link to the system template. Next. And the input and output of the relevant products. Next one. Then for some of those systems, next, we do have also additionally an indication on the relevant application level. In this case, whether it's applicable for a household, for a neighborhood, or for rather a whole entire city. And the next one would then be the management level. So is it managed by the house owner? Is it a shared, appropriate for shared management, or does it need to be managed by the public utility? So in this case, part 1 and part 2 work together. Next slide, please. In the same way, what we have been looking at, and the pictures I was sharing was from a PDF document. We do also have an e-compendium, which is an online version of the overall different tools, the technology finding tool. It is a little bit more interactive, and there are additional references and further documents available. Next, please. The e-compendium is hosted by the sswm.info website, and the specialty about it is that they have been providing a perspective button. Please, next. which is located on the right side of the screen. And depending on where you come from, you might want to use the e-compendium with a perspective of looking at the technology. So it will directly provide you, like in this case, with a variety of technologies which are available, but it might also be that you start with a systems perspective or even a different one. So this is the e-compendium for the technologies. Now the next one, please. And there's also a specific compendium which was developed with support of the Inter-American Development Bank and others, addressing rural sanitation for rural areas in Mexico. It's both elements are available in English, in Spanish, and this is the overview which I wanted to share with you based on the AirWAC compendium and on the different online compendiums which do already exist. Now comes the next slide, please. So there are compendiums describing the overall setting with 55 technologies being chosen. And there is a compendium describing the rural sanitation situation specifically for Mexico. Now, there is no compendium covering the conditions of the wider Caribbean region, characterized by specific context of the natural and built environment. Next one. So in our opinion, one of the characteristics, for example, of the wider Caribbean region would be a big variety in rainfall patterns. You have areas with about 40 to 50 rainy days a year, and you have others with more than 230 days of rain a year. This has an impact on the groundwater situation. And because the groundwater is one source of fresh water, and it is impacting the drinking water security in the different regions. It is our belief that we need to address, according to the specific situation, the either drinking water, groundwater scarcity, or the vulnerability of freshwater resources as one cross-cutting issue to make the right decisions on my treatment system or on my treatment technology that was not provided in the original compendium. The next slide, please. Another part, next slide, please. Thank you. Another part is that during the recently held Stockholm World Water Week, there was a very interesting session hosted by the CREW project and a representative from the Caribbean Water and Sewerage Association was referring to challenges during the implementation of the current project, the CREW Plus project, due to the pandemic, but also due to other risks and other events, like, for example, earthquakes around St. Eustatius Islands, or we have been experiencing earthquakes in Haiti recently. There are a number of hurricanes. So we believe that what we should discuss together would be looking at those aspects and how could we create additional perspectives so that the guidance for understanding different technologies and systems would take into account the vulnerability of and also the impact of our treatment systems on robustness and preparedness of the wider Caribbean region. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. So, in conclusion, we are reaching out to you as members from the different Caribbean states to provide us with feedback, and we will have the possibility to discuss that together. We believe that instead of covering 54 technologies, which are covered in the original compendium, we might want to reduce the diversity and select those who are in the focus of the ongoing program, but also for future upcoming investment programs. Let me be more clear. There are compendiums covering the rural situation, not only for Mexico, but it will also be applicable for countries like Nicaragua or Panama. We believe that we should focus on those systems where we also take into account the vulnerability of wastewater treatment systems, and we should address cross-cutting issues. For example, planning from the end with the idea of reuse in mind. And if we say reuse, what are the implications or limitations to reuse? For example, vulnerable groundwater resources. So these are the elements which we would like to discuss with you today and take into the account of the design of that compendium. Next slide, please. So the compendium project is underway. We are kickstarting the activity today for the English-speaking countries, and we will have time until mid-December. By Christmas, we should have done our design and also the writing, because in January, we'll have to submit the document, do the final editing and submit it. So the collective action is for the month of October. Today we're October 1st, and part of November. The plan is that by roughly mid-November, we will invite for another consultation workshop where we already provide a draft document beforehand. So next slide, please. Who is doing this work? And when I say we, who's involved? The opening was done by Pedro Kremer. He's the regional director of Border Las Americas. My name is Stefan Reuter. I'm working as a senior advisor for the German consultancy Aqua and Waste International. And I'm supported by Dirk Demand, who is a senior advisor based in Aruba. Selene Tripp from Border Las Americas, project manager. You have met her today. And we have two more people. We managed to get the support from Lourdes Valenzuela. She is at the same time not only working for Agua Tuya in Bolivia, but heading the secretariat of the SUSANA, the Sustainable Sanitation Alliance Latin American chapter, covering the entire region. And Gustavo Heredia, whom you know already from the last webinar series. Additionally, we do have an advisory board. In the advisory board, we do have Chris Lüthi, who is representing the institution of Switzerland, who has started with the initial compendium, the original. So we would like to reach out additionally to, for example, the Caribbean Water and Wastewater Association or the Caribbean Water and Sewerage Association, as we think it is important to have representatives, or let's say head bodies of utilities, those who are implementing in our group. Now with this, next slide, of course, you are important to us to collaborate. Next slide, please. So how can you contribute to the compendium? We are now going for a professional exchange. We are about 14 participants, and I have the impression that we don't need to split up in groups as it was intended and as we did in the previous workshop. I suggest we will remain together in one group, and we will present to you during this session also another survey link where you will describe whether you are willing and how you are willing to contribute. And let me just give a sneak peek on that survey. Next slide, please. So it will look like this. We would actually, and the key part is on the right side, you can see already the link, but that will be shared in the chat as well. And if you are interested, then we'll also send it to you after this session. There are basically 3 levels how we think we could collaborate on this. Number 1, if you are aware of a specific technology, which is, for example, not represented in the existing Airwork compendium, but which you are convinced is very much relevant to this wider Caribbean region and which should find its way into the compendium, please click the first line and let us know, and we'll reach out to you and we'll find out what it is about and how it can be reflected and where it does fit. The second part, you may be aware about a case study which will illustrate for the users of the compendium how a sanitation system under a very specific situation is very much of value, and everybody in the region using the compendium should be aware. So we're looking for case studies and for people who would like to write down those case studies, provide pictures and the narrative for that. So if you have a case study in mind, which others should not miss out, please tick number 2. Then there is number 3. In those technology sheets and also at the end of the document, we will quote a number of reference documents. Now, the reference documents from the overall compendium or the references which are already quoted in the e-compendium may not be up to date, and you may be aware about documents, maybe even elaborated during ongoing projects, which others should be aware of. And if you could share those reference documents with us, these could also not publicly, could be documents which are not publicly already listed or published, but could find their way. It could also be that you are aware about a part of a sanitation system or technology or a whole system, and you have a nice picture about it. So we would like to reflect local pictures in that document for the wider Caribbean region. These are some examples of how we could stay in touch. And if you say you just would like to stay in touch and remain informed, you tick number 4, and we'll keep you updated about the development. So this is how we would like you to reflect. But now let's go back to the next slide. Let's go back to our situation now. We will not make the announcement for the different breakout groups, but we will now give you the floor to either say, aha, in your presentation, thank you very much, there are some elements which I'm not clear I understood correctly. We would like to start with some feedback on the content which I just prepared. And then we will have 2 more questions prepared specifically on the 2 aspects on planning from the end, what does it mean, and being in line with the built environment, the natural environment. So with this, thank you very much for your attention. That was the presentation of the project. And I would like to invite for comments, questions, please.
Stefan?
Yes.
There is a comment from Ron Martin.
Yes.
Maybe also included draft for some Caribbean islands.
Yes, Ron, maybe you would like to elaborate on that one, please. Can you unmute yourself and elaborate on that point a little bit? Maybe you write in the chat. Sorry, I don't have a mic. Okay, no worries. But maybe you would explain. So maybe include drought for some Caribbean islands. Are you referring to the point I made initially that some islands have only 40 rain days? So we might need to include systems working under very under conditions with almost no precipitation. So yes, if this is what you would like to suggest, absolutely. So maybe you are part of filling the survey and let us know what you exactly thought with the situation of drought. Water might be limited for a certain application. Exactly. So there are this is what we would like to hear from you. Which are the elements which we should not miss out? I was initially having in mind that a number, for example, of dry toilet system may rather be relevant for rural applications, but not for agglomerations in the Caribbean, which mainly have flush toilets and the sewer. But if you're saying, or if I'm getting you right, Ron, that for example, dry toilets because of drought and not using water to flush should be part of it, please make a comment. We will share the link of the existing compendium, and also with the presentation, you will have the link for the compendium of the AirWAC and also the existing online compendiums for SSWM info. We'll do that, and we look really forward to collaborate with you. So that was a remark by Mwanza, if I'm not mistaken, right? Okay, variations in the water table. That was a question. The variations in the water table. Yes, Ron, correct. We do have that situation in the region. So any other points or questions, or somebody who would like to unmute? We are 14 people, so please go ahead, leave a comment, leave a question, or otherwise we'll start with the next more specific question. Right. So can I invite, yeah, drought can be considered a natural disaster. Exactly. So how to design or how to reflect in a compendium. The compendium will be mainly a communication tool and structuring the different elements of the sanitation service chain. So we'll be able to then on an informed basis discuss which of those treatment technologies or what kind of systems being composed of various treatment steps may be most adequate to invest in sanitation solutions which are resilient and robust towards disasters like not only flooding but droughts. Right. Now, Ron, thank you very much for using the chat actively. And you mentioned you're not sure whether the compendium will include resilience and mitigation to disaster. So there are also, there's a compendium with the support of AirWAC and also the German Toilet Organization. There is a compendium which was developed to address specifically sanitation in emergency situations. So this one is addressing situations for humanitarian relief, mainly like immediately after an earthquake or any other disaster. So very specifically with looking at how to ensure sanitation in the first 6 weeks to 6 months after a disaster. So this is existing, but I believe that for this compendium, there are elements which, and that's where we would like to have your feedback, but I believe that there are elements which should be reflected in this compendium so that we do not only have a compendium which is specifically addressing emergency situations globally, but which is very specific to your region and reality. Yeah. It looks like we are already into this discussion looking at those cross-cutting components. So can I ask maybe Dirk to share those questions? Thank you very much. Question number 2, very specific conditions. And of course, I'm also inviting, we don't need to have this as a dialogue between where it's only me answering, but of course I'm inviting Pedro and Selena also to join in. And whenever you feel, please also do not hesitate to raise another question. So question number 2, how will the specific conditions of the Caribbean built and natural environment impact the compendium development? Now we're looking at a contextualization process for the Caribbean. So maybe on this point, we started already with Ron mentioning that there are also situations of drought. Maybe, Pedro, could I invite you to also elaborate a little bit on that situation of the contextualization and how people could, what people could think of and how they can then contribute sharing. Pedro?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah, no?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, yeah, I think it is clear that, and you mentioned it already, that this general compendium was wonderful, and now it's the second step is continuously create, let's say, yeah, some guidelines that are more referring to contextualized situations. And you already mentioned there are a couple of compendia already addressing certain contexts, and now we would like to see this compendium contextualized for the Caribbean. And there also, I think these cross-cutting issues that will be making the added value, because the cross-cutting topics that we should address, and we would need to know which are these cross-cutting topics that need to be addressed, will be the help, for my understanding, for the designers, for the implementers, for the decision makers, because the technology as such is, let's say, important to be embedded in a clear understanding of this situation on the ground. And for example, typically, for my understanding from the Caribbean situation, is this high groundwater table. So this is something that everyone that has been working on the ground, and not only in the Caribbean, but in whatever situation where we have, you know, this permanent groundwater table, let's say where you dig a meter and you stand already half a meter in the water, that means you have to adapt your systems. And often that has not taken place. And we know so many projects in which, you know, the standard has come in, and the standard says dig 2 meters down. And of course, for technologically it's possible, but then from the management of this unit and from the risk the unit provides, it's enormous. And at the end, normally these systems for one reason or other end up not working. So this means this would be a cross-cutting issue from my understanding that we would need to address. And let's say, if we have situation in which we have a natural disaster, as it was mentioned, no water. If no water, obviously no water flushing toilets. So this kind of discussions we would need to bring in a very concise manner, yeah, that is at the end. And I could mention now more, but I'm sure in the audience we have people that know the Caribbean region better than myself, and would like to add to this cross-cutting issues that we, or topics that we would need to develop, bring into the book, so that everyone can then by itself take decisions on the catalog of technical options. Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro. Any additional comment regarding the natural and the built environment? Anyone would like to ask a question or contribute?
Let me just...
Dirk, is it you?
Yes, I do want to know. You see, we have islands like Aruba, Curacao in the south are really dry. We have a really less precipitation here than other countries, other islands. The problem is not there's no water. The problem is the water is really, really expensive because it comes out of the sea. So it makes the recycling the water, to use the water not only for one time, is one of the really needs here on this island. Maybe it's also one of these aspects we're saying it's not, we don't have water, the water is really expensive.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. So these are the elements, and for example, islands like Trinidad, where the drinking water relies on desalination, which comes at a very specific cost. Would it make sense to look at reusing the treated water for purposes which so far have been covered by desalinated water? It would give the treatment utility an additional potential source of income, which needs to be reflected when it comes to treatment decisions. These are elements, and which would bring us then to the next question. So Dirk, I guess we can move to the next one, unless somebody is quickly taking the microphone. Actually, a question.
Yes,
David, yeah.
Yeah, Stefan, thank you. I appreciate. I'm David Wilkgraber. It's a pleasure to be joining you. I was team leader and still supporting the Crew Plus. So I'm very happy to see you guys working on the compendium. Taking on Pedro's comment.
David, one quickly. David, where are you joining us from, please? From which?
Yeah, Washington. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Washington, D.C. I don't know if I'm here, but yeah,
Right.
Washington, D.C., working here, retired from IDB, have worked 19 years at IDB, and very interested in plugging in here. Taking a bit your last comment about and Pedro's comment also about anticipating the demand of the end users of the compendium. And we've struggled a lot with looking at green solutions, right? And we've come to the conclusion that the green economy and circular economy of water are very much needed. But we still struggle with the idea of launching and promoting systems that are non-conventional, that are not the standard engineering solutions that the utilities are taking on. We produced a review of nature-based solutions, basically constructed wetlands, at IDB about 3 years ago, and we came up to the conclusion that there's very much done in terms of academia, in terms of innovations in technology, in green technology, from isolated actors, that it hasn't been infiltrated or at least percolated into what utilities do. It would be nice if this compendium can stress a little bit more the nature-based solutions, but more really to provide alternative solutions to a large gray infrastructure that is very difficult to maintain and very, very, very difficult to operate in the long term with sustainable revenues. So I would really encourage you to look at how we can actually not just generate a technical catalog of and technical sheets of technologies, but actually drive more into or get into more the management approaches and the rationale behind adopting those systems. If water is scarce, there's definitely a reason to reuse water at the end and treat it. And now there are many preconceived notions that nature-based solutions require much space and the islands do not have the space. That's not true. I mean, you can actually go into very heavy, intensive biological treatment that involves very little space and achieve lots of results in terms of treated effluent, and actually remove most of pollutants and contaminants as well with macrophytes and other biological processes. So I really encourage you to look at that side of the technology and stress that. For constructed wetlands are kind of being implemented in the very small systems, isolated systems. How can a utility actually take them on and apply them more systematically? That would be somehow a plus to your compendium as well. Over to you.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you for being part of this important launch event. I couldn't agree more. And now taking into account that we have a limited amount of time, we have been thinking about how we utilize the opportunity to reaching out to the different actors coming together under this framework. And we thought involving the Sustainable Sanitation Alliance as a platform and maybe continuing the dialogue with specific stakeholders in that online forum, because it needs, the dialogue will continue probably beyond the project line of this compendium development. So we will focus and making sure that all the different and latest nature-based solutions, not only for constructed wetlands in peri-urban areas, but how to make them part and parcel of the built environment in urban areas, how that can be reflected. Very good point. But then also we need to find ways to address utilities, address consultants. So that, and that's why we thought actually including case studies, including descriptions of what has been done, how and where, mainly what has been done in the Caribbean, but maybe also for experiences which are very much applicable to the Caribbean. So this is what we would like to invite. So thank you, David, for reminding us this urgency, and it's not only applicable for the region, but I guess even beyond. We're looking for green and circular economy based treatment solutions for serving urban public services like water and wastewater more specifically. Thank you. Now, the approach of planning from the end is a point which we think David just mentioned, the management part. So how will you operate and maintain systems? How will you engage in choosing systems not having the infrastructure development in mind, but also to operate them on a longer term? And specifically, how will the island, how will tourism, how will industry, how will people benefit from this kind of solution which is to be chosen, and what are the choices actually we can discuss? So yeah, this is what we have in mind, and we would really like to continue the dialogue. Maybe can I invite who else feels inspired to come to the floor, unmute the microphone and contribute? Right.
Meanwhile, nobody takes the mic. I may take my opportunity to expand a little bit on this question that I think it's also one of these questions that somehow answers also to David, because it's a question that goes into, I would assume, into that where we are all in. That means to change this this linear thinking into a more circular thinking, meaning we need to understand that this is over. The 100 years linear thinking in water and sanitation, it's over, and the next 100 years will be circular. The question is how we get this shift done, and that is what I was listening through the comments from David is the problem, because we are in this transition time in which probably I could say most of the municipalities, most of the water providers, the utilities, they know that we will need to do that. And they are convinced. 20 years before, that was not the case. But nowadays, you don't need to convince anyone on that need, but you need now to show them what are the options to do it. And that is, I think, where this question comes, how we can plan from the end. That means if we know that we need to recycle in order not to contaminate, then we need to know what to do now with these products from the treatment systems and see what is the demand, who will take water, energy, nutrients, stabilized sludge, who will take that? And let's say, which is the highest value of the application? Yeah, so should we go and give it to the industry? Should we more apply that in urban agriculture, horticulture, or should we send it back to the groundwater recharge? So these questions, I think, we will need to somehow answer, somehow at least bring into this discussion of the cross-cutting issues from this compendium. And only then we will answer to David in this case, you know, to say, hey, how we can convince a mayor from one of these nice small islands to move from one approach to another. This means this kind of nature-based solution approach. And that is, I think, the reason why we need to address that in the compendium.
Thank you very much,
there are
Pedro.
more comments.
Yes, there is a hand raised from Jose Barba Gomez. Maybe you would like to unmute yourself and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Just to add on to this question, I think that
maybe a word where you are connecting from, please, and then.
So I'm currently in Mexico, but I just arrived from Hamburg, Germany. I was doing my master's over there.
Oh, nice. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
So I think we need to use a combination of methodologies so that we can take into consideration the whole system. For instance, we need to understand, analysis of the problem, analysis of the stakeholders, analysis of the objectives, and then we can figure out the analysis of most viable strategies that can be implemented to see which, because we will always have multiple solutions that we can implement, but we need to check a cost-benefit analysis to see which ones are the most viable from one point, as well as, for instance, nutrients and so on. What are we going to be doing with those? So we also need to focus on economically viable, socially viable, and environmentally sustainable solutions.
Very good. Very good, Jose. So I would like to invite you to also click on the survey form, and from the knowledge and inspiration which has brought you to join us today, share the documents which you would like we should reference to, or maybe you are even aware about case studies or elements. The compendium as such is not a planning document, but it is useful and used for planning. The compendium is not a costing tool, but we should also provide elements or principles how different technologies link to operation and maintenance cost, for example, where they can increase or rather lower. So thank you very much for bringing your perspective, Jose, and please do reach out, fill out the form, and let's continue the dialogue on how you imagine what could be reflected. But let me just ask, have you had the opportunity to or have you come across this compendium of sanitation systems before?
Not as such. I was new to the compendium concept.
Yeah, So let's learn together, and maybe let's continue. I would really look forward to that one. Sophie needs to leave. Thank you. Any additional comment? Otherwise, your comment is written. I take it like that. Thank you, Sophie, for having been with us then. Any additional last comment from your side, Sophie? Otherwise, we'll be in touch. We have Alex Harewood from us. Alex, from your registration, I can see that you're working for the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center. That sounds interesting. Any comment from your side? Would you like to unmute your microphone and maybe provide us with a comment, what you are hearing or what you are observing about this document and how it can, what's the link to climate change impacts of the Caribbean? Alex, do you have a microphone or would you like to join? Otherwise, anyone else, we are with you. We are for you. Instead of me opening just another slide and sharing additional information, we would like to hear from you guys. All right.
Meanwhile, maybe just complementing and getting some of the points together. I think now the last intervention from Jose and also David, were focusing somehow also on this management issue. And we had that also in the last Spanish kickoff workshop, in which this clarity of saying mainly if we are coming with innovation, that means innovation from the point of view that we would like to encourage to move from the conventional approaches to some approach that is highly circular, that requires by sure also to adapt this management system. And that I think is something that I would also encourage to be a chapter, a cross-cutting chapter, how this management, we in some of our projects call that co-management system, because we are aware that it will be not anymore probably only the utility managing the system. You will need to add some other relevant institutions to manage the system, because it is not anymore only water or only wastewater. It is probably has something to do with reuse, with agriculture. So you need to link, and this is also one of the main difficulties when designing a project. And that I think from Jose, I was listening that, you know, this systematic approach until we reach or before we reach to the technological decision. That will be important to highlight that also in the company. Thank you.
Stefan, and just following on Pedro's remark, yeah, absolutely agree with you, Pedro. People are really afraid of getting into non-linear systems because of the added complexities, right? But now, with all this evolution and convincing and technological evidence that the circular solutions are viable, it's time for us to go into less complex but achieve more clarity in terms of what are the different co-benefits that are achieved through this circular economy solutions. So let's not stay away from those complexities. Let's try to address them, and maybe the compendium can shed some specific information and systems in which you can derive co-benefits and make them clear to the audience, make them clear to the user. That's something that is quite interesting. So I really welcome this effort. Let's think a little bit more about more of a decision support system or decision support compendium, rather than just laying out the available technologies, right? So in that case, you go into the management structure and how are all the benefits spread and achieved, and what are the actual best and recommended practices that are suggested for this.
That sounds very much interesting, David. If these, because this drives us into a little bit maybe specific contextualization, where the biggest need is. If decision support is maybe the factor which should be enabled or supported with this compendium, then it would be interesting to elaborate maybe a little bit on that. And as I feel we do have a little bit time, and there are not so many people queuing up for immediate, but let's use the time, David. Could you elaborate a little bit, decision support? What would you, because then we don't look at the functional systems and how they can be combined, but I would rather look at decision-making trees. What are the points to be checked to understand whether, for example, a nature-based system would apply for my situation in coastal Trinidad or in another environment? Would you like to?
And maybe what are the maybe focused more on methodologies, tools that could help assess the co-benefits, for instance, of an integrated solution. So in that sheet, technical sheet that you have, you may have included a couple of tools that are available to calculate, to estimate the co-benefits. What are the co-benefits, the joint co-benefits of doing recovery in terms of nutrients, energy, water security, all that stuff? And you may have some little tools that the user can access to actually estimate by simulating a situation and get immediate results right away. That could be a good focus. Maybe have a little module in each of the sheets that get you into more these practical tools that may be available and are available, I'm pretty sure. For instance, greenhouse gas emission reductions. We know that the sanitation can generate important benefits. And even constructed wetlands can do some interesting, an interesting job in terms of functioning as carbon sinks, depending on the extension, obviously, but with accelerated biological processes, you can have an enormous absorption of CO2 generated by the treatment system. Is there anywhere that has been quantified? Yes or not? I mean, maybe yes, and you have a little link there to a tool that could help. In that regard, it's not a full decision support system, but it's something that helps decision making and convince people to do it. Yeah.
Okay, and I think these provides a better relief, and thank you for joining the discussion today. It provides gives a little bit more structure and idea of in which direction we can organize ourselves in the short lapse of time we do have. Would you be aware from your perspective, David, whether this activity and the document aims to contribute to that, whether this will be followed by investment programs in order to develop sustainable infrastructure? Are there programs in the pipeline for utilities, or is the exercise rather going in the sense that utilities and planners should be ready if an opportunity comes along?
No, in as much as the these modules generate some information about benefits, about economic benefits, and even go and venture a little bit into revenue sources. You may have a whole set of revenue sources that can help argue for a project with reuse, right? So yes, it's very attractive because from the experience that we have, anybody looking for a profitable, bankable, as they say, bankable projects are looking for some of the numbers right away. I mean, if you have a concept, bring me what are the benefits, who the beneficiaries are, and then we can start talking. And then we can start mobilizing, let's say, $250,000 to prepare a big project or a medium-sized project, but not until then. So maybe this exercise that you are generating with the compendium will help some project developers, small project developers, get to that point in which you can have some numbers there.
Excellent.
Okay, I would like to second that and say yes, the direction is perfect. And I would also encourage us to think of one or two really good examples, because at the end of the day, these decision makers, and we are talking about probably the mayors or the ministries that are responsible for such move, they want to see it. And I think that is something that we should stress, that we have good examples, and if possible examples where they could say, okay, I will make my next move and I will just go and see it. And that, I think, is a little bit also what we owe these decision makers, to say, we might not have millions of good examples, but we have good examples. And these examples, we should at least want to, and then bring that with all these figures that David was mentioning, with all that information that the decision maker, doesn't matter if it's the local decision maker or an investment bank, requires. And I think this is possible. We have very good examples nowadays, God thanks, so we should give them and withdraw from examples that are not as good, you know.
Totally agree with you. It's more a focus on best practices and show the results, the practical results. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you, Pedro. Yeah.
Okay, now we have a trialogue at least. Let me invite for a last round of comments or questions. We're here to listen to you. Also, Jose, if you feel like you would like to add something, Alex, Francisco, is there anything you would like to let us know or to share in addition to what we were discussing? Otherwise, please use the link. We will definitely look forward to come back to you, reach out to you, and please let us know already through the survey what kind of contribution you think you could bring and share with us. For example, David, you mentioned a document which was published 3 years ago by the IDB on nature-based solutions. That might be something or an element from that which we might want to feature. Yeah, so anyone else? Otherwise, I think it is then also not a problem to wrap up, get back to our work and get things done. But please, last opportunity for questions, comments. Really, I'm happy that you have joined today. Right. Then, thank you very much. So in wrapping up, I guess what we have been sharing with you, the project of developing compendium, we have a very concise and short timeline, but no problem. We have been reaching out to you. You will reply to us. We will organize the next consultation workshop by mid-November. That's what we aim for, and use the time until then. We have been asking what elements, in addition to the logic of that Airwork compendium, of our reference document, we could include. We have got very clear messages. Let's look into the management implications, into the beneficiation elements. How can decision maker get a grip on that one in order to overcome maybe resistance to go for circular economy oriented solutions? And let's find ways where we can feature good practice, maybe also failures linked to not the technology, but the management, or the other way around. So let's bring that together. We will write down what we have got as feedback. We will also share, make this available to others who could not make it to our meeting today. And from my side, I would already thank you very much for having joined today, and I'll give it over to you, Pedro, for the closure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stefan. It was a pleasure listening also to your explanations nowadays, and now in English, because I had the pleasure to listen to the whole thing in Spanish. Thank you very much, Stefan. Thank you also for our team to make all this preparation and get this kickoff workshop on. On the other side, I would like to thank, of course, the participants. And I think I take home somehow contextualization, nobody discussed, we need to do. It's clear it should not be only a technical compendium. We need decision-making support.
All right. So thank you very much for joining us. We are compiling the elements. We will definitely be in touch with you, and we look forward to produce something together with you. One idea of launching the outcome would be during Latino Sun #6, which will take place in April next year. For that, we need to have all the elements and finalized in January. Now is the time for bringing the content together. Thanks for joining today. Look forward to be in touch with you. Thank you for everyone, Selena and Dirk and Pedro, who have supported and ensured. Thanks to colleagues from GIZ. Okay, then in this case, I still can't hear you. Thank you very much for coming. Looking forward to collaborate. Please don't hesitate to fill out, and let's get this done. Thank you very much.